Inspired by the likes of Odin Sphere and other Vanillaware titles, The Vagrant is a 2D hack-and-slash action RPG made by OTK Games, a small Beijing-based indie studio. After an unsuccessful Kickstarter campaign in 2015, the game was made available on Steam in early access 2 years later, before finally being completed in 2017. You play as a wandering sellsword named Vivian, the eponymous Vagrant of the title. She's also a rune warden, a powerful art that runs in her family which allows her to channel magic through her weapons to devastating effect. Unfortunately, that also means that the powerful Wizards Academy wants her head, making traveling to the country of Mithrilia in search of her missing father a bit complicated. Things go from bad to worse when her ship wrecks, a demon named Soul Reaper attacks, and Vivian ends up under the thumb of an Academy witch named Holborn, who forces her to go on a shady mission accompanied by her loyal apprentice Camden, and is clearly up to something nefarious that may be related to her family's history. Seriously, never trust anyone who wears a belt as a top. Anyway, the story in this game is pretty good. Lots of interesting characters with well-developed personalities, no, I don't just mean those, well-written dialogue, and a plot that, while serving primarily as a means of getting you from point A to point B, never gets boring. One thing to keep in mind, however, is the lack of voice acting outside of combat grunts and an odd line here or there, so be prepared to do some reading. When you aren't reading dialogue, you'll be hacking and slashing your way through a variety of locations and environments, and god damn are they gorgeous. When I said this game was inspired by Vanillaware's creations, I wasn't kidding. Everything from the scenery to the NPCs to the hordes of enemies has that beautiful hand-painted style that characterizes games like Dragon's Crown and Odin Sphere. Colorful, vibrant, and yes, unapologetically busty. Oh, and the food looks delicious too, can't forget that. This is all especially impressive given that only 3 people made this game, only one of which was an actual artist. About the only negative with the visuals is that aside from Vivian herself, the other characters and enemies are animated using skeletal animation versus frame by frame, which can result in some jerky looking motions, especially on the larger creatures. However, given the amount of time and money it would take to do frame by frame animation for so many hand painted characters on an indie budget, I'm willing to forgive it. Completing the visuals is a soundtrack by Gabe Castro that ranges from wistful adventure music to rocking combat themes to okay, so the soundtrack is a bit eclectic, is all I'm saying. It's still the kind of thing that I'll listen to when I'm not playing the game, so it is definitely a point in its favor. Most of your time in The Vagrant will be spent in combat, comboing light and heavy attacks to lay waste to a wide variety of monsters, undead, demons, and... Seriously, guys, what the fuck? Anyway, controls are nice and responsive with a good range of simple but effective combos that you'll unlock through acquiring mana crystals from defeated enemies to upgrade Vivian's stats, moveset, and magic abilities. Where you start with only a dodge and a few basic attacks, by the end you'll become a whirling, stabbing, ghost sword summoning incarnation of bikini-wearing death. And you better get used to that because your equipped armor doesn't change your appearance. What it will do is allow you to spend mana inscribing runes you acquire along the way to give yourself passive bonuses. The same goes for your weapons, with the added benefit of elemental effects depending on the blade that not only burn, freeze, and electrocute enemies, but also affect your powers as well. But the only issue here is that you can't buy runes anywhere, which makes finding good ones a matter of RNG or disassembling equipment and hoping for the best. Aside from the usual treasures, you'll also collect an assortment of crafting materials and ingredients that can be used to create equipment and meals. The former is self-explanatory and is generally cheaper than buying ready-made gear, while acquiring recipes will let you cook up some tasty dinner at campfires and give yourself a variety of stat bonuses. I find myself using the latter far more than the former though, especially on lower difficulties. There are also a variety of potions to quaff for healing and temporary buffs, with the added quirk that their effectiveness is reduced if you spam them too quickly. This applies only to the healing and rage potions, however, as all of the others require you to pause the game, go into your inventory, and use them there. Personally, I would have preferred being able to access them via the same method as the others, as pausing in the middle of a combat kinda breaks the flow of an otherwise smooth and satisfying experience. I've heard some people describe The Vagrant as a Metroidvania-style game, however, I'd say it's more influenced by that genre than an example of it. Your progress is dependent on the story's progression rather than acquiring new movement abilities to get past previously impassable obstacles, and while it's possible to backtrack to earlier areas and search for hidden stuff there isn't really a necessity for it. There are 2 endings, however, and if you want the better of the 2, you are going to need to do at least some exploring. Beyond that, there are rifts that open up after clearing each area that consist of tough combat challenges, and an optional boss rush style dungeon that can be unlocked with the right hidden keys, both of which give some very substantial rewards. Ultimately, I highly recommend giving The Vagrant a try. It looks wonderful, plays great, and has a pretty good story to string you along as you fight your way through armies of monsters. And did I mention it costs about $5? Because yeah, it got all this going for it, and it only costs about $5. The developers are currently kickstarting their next game, link in the description below, and judging by this one, I'd say there's every reason to believe it's going to be good, so go check that out, and go check out The Vagrant. If you can afford a cup of coffee and enjoy fantasy hack and slashers with gorgeous art styles, you owe it to yourself to get this one.